There we go.
Hi, and welcome back to the Up Zone, where understanding politics is made simple. We are your three hosts. I am Tisha S. Waddell, joined by Ted Moan and Elmer Floyd, all former elected officials, two of us in capacity as city council members, and one of us, Mr. Floyd, in the capacity of a house representative. So we know what we're talking about when we talk to you about this stuff, you guys. We have a little background. Today is going to be a pretty straightforward show. We're going to be talking about the municipal filings, talking about how much it costs you, talking about who's already thrown their name in the ring. And we're also going to be talking about the state budget. So both of those encompass a whole lot. So we'll get into the gritty in the city, the word on the curb. But before we do, gentlemen, how are you today? Mr. Moan and Mr. Floyd, how are you today?
Very good.
Great.
Wonderful. Glad to hear it. As am I. This week has been a hot one, y'all. It's been a hot one. It seems like we have put the cold snaps in the past and we are smack dab into
Mm-hmm.
summer.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all stay cool now. And if you need a little help, y'all make sure you give Langdon, okay?
That's
Shameless
who I
plug.
use. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So let's just jump right in. Mr. Floyd, you and Ted were filling me in on what it is shaping up to look like as far as the municipal election. Ted, you've got a graphic. You want to throw that up for us?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. This is the city of Fayetteville. Across the top are the 10 incumbents,
Okay.
in district order. Everybody, all incumbents except for Courtney Banks McLaughlin, I have her outlined in red. She has not
Okay.
filed yet, but I'm not surprised. She normally waits to the end of the first week or the second week. Under the mayor, Freddie Dela Cruz has filed. Him and the mayor filed on the first day. Below that is Keem Jones. He's well known in the community.
Is he though? Is he?
Well, parts of the community, yeah.
Okay.
On his Facebook, he said after basically after much thought, I'm going to run for mayor. So I have him outlined in red because through
Which really
yesterday.
that shocks the snot out of me, Ted, because I thought for sure he was going to run for city council because I've been watching somebody is writing excellent articles for him in the Fayetteville Observer. And the reason I say that somebody is writing them is because I've had an occasion to have a conversation with King Jones, and his articulation is much different in person than it is in the Observer. So I'm thinking he might have like a ghostwriter, or either he's a horrible face-to-face communicator and a great writer.
Hmm.
But so he has gotten some really great press coverage. But what I really thought he was going to run for city council. It shocks me that he's running for the seat of mayor. This should be interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and again, that was just his Facebook post for a couple weeks ago, and he hasn't gone in and filed yet.
So he might just be talking.
Yeah.
And
Um.
I know that at one point, Ted, I will tell you this. I know that when all of that stuff was going on around the market house, when the sit-ins were happening, I know he was a part of all of that. And it is my understanding that there was some people paid him to kind of, because remember he was with Maya. Remember when Maya Warren was on the courthouse steps and she spoke out very harshly against Mitch, and said what she needed to say and then went on. But he was there with her and they were in
Mhm.
cahoots, and he was a part of the Fayetteville organization that was staging the sit-in. And it's my understanding that he it was alleged that he was paid to kind of shut all that down. And it just surprises me. I'll let you guys connect the dots however you want to, but it just surprises me that he said that. But it would not surprise me if we never saw it come to fruition.
Right.
Now, go ahead, Ted.
Yeah. I mean, people post on Facebook their intentions, and some follow through, and some just don't.
And some do not. Now, what else shocked me, Ted, is this D1. That shocked me. When I got the text that said Kathy filed for re-election in District 1, I
right?
literally threw my hands up. I was like, what is she thinking? She wants to be the mayor of this city. Like in her DNA, she desires to be the next mayor, the next female mayor of this city. There's there, there will never be a more opportune time. She cannot wait on Mitch to say he's not going to be in this seat anymore. She is a contender for him. She is a viable challenger for him. But for some reason, because Johnny has told me this out of his own mouth a number of times, for some reason, white people in this community do not think that they have a shot at beating Mitch.
Mm. Well, I know I was listening to Mitch, the mayor, on WFMC with Goldie this morning, and Goldie said, "Hey, you're about to get married, and he said, yeah, and he alluded to he had conversations with his new wife, upcoming wife, and everything. So maybe once he gets married again, maybe this is his last 2 years potentially, because what 2 years on city council, and now he's running for his fourth. Uh, well, no, he's been there what 10 years now, right? Or at least eight. And so maybe if he doesn't uh, file, in 2 years, maybe Kathy, and there's an open seat, maybe Kathy jumps in there.
It's not
Um,
going to look good for her though coming up after this next term. Y'all remember what I said? I wanted to see everybody on that top row reelected because they're going to have to face this budget again.
oh
And
yeah,
coming off of the heels of this second budget, it's not going to look good for any of them for reelection. So we
no,
will probably see a complete overhaul on the city council in the next 2 years because when they did this first budget and they scraped by, but when they have to implement this next set of increases, people are not that. And so this is not this was her shot. This was her shot. I think her best opportunity would have been the year after I resigned because everybody everybody was paying attention to the nefariousness of Mitch. I think that she was nervous then. She should have done it then. That's when people were looking for an alternative to him, viably looking. We saw that in the fact that De La Cruz got as many votes as he did. Complete unknown. Ted, you remember, nobody knew who he was,
no, he got over 5,000 votes.
which is unheard of in an instance where there's this beloved incumbent, right? But the
Mhm.
reality is, and Mitch did not, and when we look at the overall vote, many people voted and didn't even vote for mayor. They didn't vote for him or for De La Cruz. We talked about that in a prior podcast. Y'all can go back and find that. But I say all that to say that was the prime year for her to run. But
Yeah,
this would still be a good opportunity. And Kathy, you can still change your mind. You can still change your mind. It'll cost you some money. But you can still change your mind. And I'm telling you, I would not tell you something to try to see you fail. You
right.
can beat him, Kathy. You have the opportunity. You've done the groundwork. You've been out courting the black community. You've done the work with the women. You've put on all these events. Your name is a household name. You've got a strong showing with these builders, and you can beat him, baby. But that's for you to have confidence in. But go ahead, Ted, run it down.
Yep, yep. And so Jose Alex Rodriguez has not filed. He ran against Kathy last time. Him and Mr. Milburn was a write-in. So we're just waiting to see what happens with those two.
And with
Uh,
him, if he could just keep his mouth shut, he could probably do okay. No, really.
right.
If he could just run his campaign and not talk about what he doesn't know,
Mm-hmm.
because he's very inflammatory and he's filled with misinformation. If you ever hear him, he makes these wild allegations that you can't even tie back to anything. And it's if he would just run because he's a viable contender against her, if he can just toe the road and run his campaign.
Right, right. So District Two, the other day, Laura Rodriguez Musler,
Who is
fi-
she?
I, I, I found her on Facebook, but there's nothing there to.
Mr. Floyd, do you know who she is?
and not heard of it before.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And then below that, Malik Davis, I have him in red because he has not filed, but he has a beautiful like 2.5,
He's
3
got all the
minutes.
stuff up, right?
Yeah, yeah. He's got a beautiful introductory video on his Facebook page. Uh, no, so right now,
So do you think
nobody,
he'll be a viable contender for Councilmember Ingram?
well, in his video, he said, he was born, raised, went to school, goes to church in District 2 his whole life. So
Which is her thing too. She said born and
yeah,
raised in District 2.
yeah. So it depends how much connections he has
And
across.
they're both around the same age, yeah.
Yeah, they're real close. It looks like. And
So
then
in this instance, it would come down to incumbency and the female vote because if all the other factors are equal,
yeah, it could be.
she's
Yeah.
gonna have to campaign, Ted. She's going to have to campaign this go round. She did
Hmm.
not really campaign the last time. We saw her get a very late start with her putting information out about her campaign. She is going to have to campaign this time.
Right.
If he files, he is going to, I mean, he's already campaigning. If he files, my prediction is that he will campaign hard, which will either force her to campaign or force her to concede defeat.
Right. Yeah. And then Mario Benavente, District 3, DJ Hare, District 4, they're all by themselves through, yesterday. District 5 is the only one that right now has a primary in October, but there's still 7 days of filing open, and I, don't- I know Mr. Dawkins. I interviewed Mr. LaChance and Mr. Dawkins on WIDU. I've met Lynn Green. She
She's the one that stands out to me, and not just because she's a woman. She stands out to me, Ted, because of what you shared with me about her past participation with politics. Mr. Floyd, did you have your hand up?
No, no, I'm just listening to you expert talk about.
Yeah, yeah. And then the last one is a new guy, Justin BRBE, I think it is. So they're going to have a primary. Uh,
If he takes that energy he's got in this picture and he gets out in campaigns, he could surprise us all, Ted.
well, he's
Because
got
you said
some
that he's unaffiliated, right?
right, and I want to say he has 4 kids. They adopted one. At one point he was a major in the military.
Yeah, he could
Uh,
surprise us all. He could upset the apple cart.
right. And if you look at District 5, there's a lot of patriotic people in there. Retired militaries and this and that, just like my neighborhood.
Yeah, and there's some people who have been turned off by Johnny, but they just didn't have any alternative.
Right.
Because
And then
again, with Fred LaChance is a lot like he tied himself to Rodriguez. They were at the hip. You know what I'm saying? And so
they go to Republican events together all the time. Yeah, they've been
right,
doing that for over a year. Yeah.
right.
So District 6 and 7, no, no challengers. Courtney, I'm sure she's gonna file. As of now, I've heard of nobody in District 8, and then Dino Hondros, District 9. I haven't heard anybody interested in District 9. So this might be a very boring election cycle.
Mr. Floyd, what does it say that there are no challengers for one, two, three, four, five, six of the seats? Well, seven currently. Seven of the seats out of 10.
Nothing that's surprising in politics. Nothing that's
And
surprising, but don't take for granted, those persons who have already filed, because
absolutely.
the November election showed me that a lot of people that didn't campaign was very successful.
Absolutely. Let
Mhm.
me ask you this though. Does it mean that people just have such great confidence in the seven people who don't have challengers, or does it mean that people just don't care anymore?
Now, people care. I mean, people care, but sometimes people that want to run, as an example, I think the mayor is $340 mayor. Council seat is 140, and I believe filing for a House seat or a Senate seat is less than $100. So I'm just saying, you're pricing people out of the political arena, and then too, you know, uh, when you look at it, and many people take it for granted that they are electable, just like you mentioned about the women vote, the black vote, and the main thing it is can you turn out your base?
Hmm.
That's the main thing, and many people, campaign towards their base, their community. So, that's the key. Can I contact and keep my base intact? I can't take for granted. And then again, a lot of people in 301 uh, some kind of way forget about the primary and the general election. But yet still, we protest, we demonstrate, we do all of this, but we go home and we sit where we are the majority and we let the minority tell the majority what they expect and what they would do as it relates to my community.
Yeah.
If you
Ted, what do you
understand,
think? Do you think that it's apathy, or do you think that it's cost, or do you think that it's just, we're
Well,
satisfied?
well, there's two sides to that story. I've heard people say if you can't raise $190 to file, then you can't raise money for radio ads, T-shirts, flyers, yard signs, and stuff like that. So when you look at how many millions of dollars are in the city budget, and if you don't have any fundraising capacity for just a minimal campaign, then you probably shouldn't put your name in the ring. Uh, like what people used to do when I first ran, you would get people talked into putting their name or registering back when it was what, $20 or $25. They would force a primary to make people spend money, but then those people that just filed just to force a primary, they never put up yard signs. They never
wait a minute,
canvassed.
Ted,
They never went to
Wait a minute, Ted. Now,
debates.
if you don't, if you don't provide challengers, in which people do, those persons year after year builds a nest egg,
Right.
okay, in which they can fight off challengers.
Yep.
But have, I mean, that's democracy. Allow people to, to run for office, not to cast them out by charging a fee of $340 to run for mayor and $140 to run for council seat, when all of the other races are less than $25 in the county. And
Right.
so, what's so important? I mean, I know the budget is is one factor, but when we talking about $340, I mean, anytime you run for public office, you must have some skin in the game yourself. That's understandable.
Yep. Okay. Well, I'll
I,
take this
I'm,
job.
I'm. So my last comment on this is, I think that it is. I think there's a culture of apathy now where politics is concerned, and I think that's why we're not seeing a whole lot of people throw their name in the ring.
Right.
Because I think that a person who wanted to run will come up with the 100 or the $300. I think that, a person who is very serious about. I voted against that, for the record. I thought it was a bad idea to increase the fee. However, I think even with it being that way, and that was the brainchild of the late Mr. Chris.
Hmm.
That was his idea, and I love him as I did. I still didn't think it was a great idea. And by the way, I forgot to say this last week, but Mr. Chris' birthday would have been the 4th of July, and he was on
Hmm.
my mind, and I was thinking about him. And I've
Yep.
got this festive hat that he gave me, and I was looking at my hat, and I just wanted to take a moment and just remember Mr. Chris, for his great contribution to politics, not only in the city but also in the state of North Carolina.
Hmm.
Um, so that's my take on it. I think that people are a little apathetic. I think there's some great people out there who would make excellent council members and who would make excellent mayors. And I think that they have expressed an interest in running before, and they are looking at. I can name three or four of them right off the top of my head, and you guys would know exactly who I'm talking about. But I think they look at this political landscape right now and they see it as a landmine, and they want to stay away.
Yeah, I could see that.
They want to stay away. But let's talk about the state budget because we've got about 10 minutes before we wrap up. Let's talk about what's happening with the North Carolina state budget. Now, Mr. Floyd, when by law is the state there's no drop date for a state budget, right? Like there is for a municipal budget.
No, no, because the state, if July 1 operate off the previous year budget.
Hmm.
So it really doesn't make any difference. The state still operate, and employees of the state will still get paid. The state will do all of its business, but it cannot exceed what was the last fiscal year budget, which right now the number hasn't changed. A little bit less than $30 billion budget, and a little bit more, 31 billion the next year. So that's not going to change.
Hmm.
It's the ingredients that you put in the cake that will change, and that's what they are working on now.
So we
So
don't know if we're getting chocolate cake or mud pie yet.
you don't know. You don't know until they're able to scramble again the cake, the eggs, or whatever. But the state had $30 billion surplus. So if they don't do and come up with a budget in July, and don't come up with a budget in August,
What happens to the surplus?
well, the surplus grows because you look at it from a standpoint of view. Do I fund back to July 1, or do I fund back to August 1, September 1, or October
Is
1?
that when we start seeing a bunch of mini appropriations?
No, no, because unless it's something related to federal dollars, matching funds for federal dollars, then they
Okay.
would sort of look at how they're going to come out of this and then fund that, or 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 get those federal dollars. But right
Well, what
now,
are some of the sticking points that we're seeing with this budget? Like what are the negotiation points?
well, you don't know because it's the chairs of the House and the Senate, and they are meeting together, and they are hammering out their differences. As last year with Senator LaVere, he was able to hammer out 432 million dollars.
Hmm.
So he had to rely on those conferee persons to keep that money in for him on the Senate side and on the House side. This year, Cumberland County is more so as a desert as it relates to state funding. And
Okay.
Hmm.
so, there was not a champion. So you really don't know what are the projects because you haven't heard them from your
You haven't heard
representative
anything. Right. Let
about
me ask
these
you this.
projects.
Y'all were talking about the veto last week and about how Senator Applewhite would consider supporting the governor in a veto against the ban on sports for transgender in sports. Have we seen that come back up yet?
I don't. I'm not sure, Trish, because there was four. There was four on the agenda. What was it, yesterday? Yesterday.
Yeah, but that
That
was
they
in the
put
House.
on
That was in the House.
yeah,
Right.
to Wednesday. So
Yeah.
you don't know. You really don't know. Uh, I'm always surprised when we sit in our caucus meeting and representatives from the executive branch sit with us. We cast our vote and we ask the question prior to casting that vote: where is the executive branch on these bills?
Mm-hmm.
And many response we get from them, we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So after we cast our vote, we would then see the executive branch vetoing the bill as if we are not in support of the governor.
Mm-hmm.
When we don't know when we cast our bill, only to find out something different.
Okay. Okay.
So,
So we're still waiting and watching. We're still kind of in limbo with where that will go.
Hmm.
and,
Is there
but you
anything else? We
did
got
mention that you
5
need
more,
support.
y'all. We got 5 more minutes. I'm trying to learn how to keep us on a time schedule. So for the audience, let me just tell y'all, I'm not being a stickler. I am doing what my co-hosts have asked me to do. I'm not being rude. If you think I'm being rude, I'm not being rude. I'm doing what my co-hosts have asked me to do. And I don't know why I've been delegated this task today, but we got 5 more minutes. So what do you guys want to wrap us up with in that 5 minutes?
This morning, I read on WREL online that one of the leaders in the House said they don't expect the budget to come up for a vote until mid-August, which is another month.
Okay.
That's the only main takeaway I got from WRAL online this morning.
So they're still just hammering.
Like Mr. Floyd said.
Okay.
I mean, you got to keep. I mean, see those big chairs, T. They look across the board, and as politicians, they look at projects and programs.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some legislators that want certain programs and projects that are chairs in their neighborhood. So
Mm-hmm.
they are battling to keep those projects in neighborhood and special funding.
Speaking of which, with our last couple of minutes, I read an article. I think it was on Newsbreak, so I don't know which news outlet put it out. But it was Van Giens, and he was Robert Van Giens, who was with the Cumberland Economic Development Corporation, and he was talking about mega sites. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
I
He was
can't.
talking about mega sites, and he was also talking about yeah.
Industrial mega sites. And so they're looking at the budget, they're looking at that budget to see if any dollars will be allocated here. But the holdup for Cumberland County, I think it's threefold. They don't have a signed off on site yet. They're working with landowners to conjoin some land and get a site. The second thing is we don't have a workforce. So he was talking about a qualified workforce is needed. And then the third thing, water and sewer.
Mm-hmm.
So
Infrastructure.
our
I said
infrastructure
that
is
before.
lacking, our workforce is lacking, and we don't have a dedicated work site. With that in mind, Mr. Floyd, with what you just said, do you think that we'll see Cumberland County as a recipient of some of those dollars that are allocated for industrial mega sites?
It depends on who is in the negotiation.
And who is advocating for Cumberland County? Because what will have to be tied to some of those dollars will have to be some water and sewer dollars. There will have to be, you'll have to see your county and your city really working to talk about how they're going to get this workforce ready, which was huge when I was with workforce development. And you'll also have to start seeing those landowners get their butts on the ball and start signing some agreements.
Teach, teach, and teach. Infrastructure, water, water, and natural gas is the key.
The key.
Now, if you don't have infrastructure, the roads to move the goods and service to the market, if you don't have a cheap source of energy that would allow a business to look at your community, you remember the Colonial Pipeline when we tried to get that natural gas coming out of West Virginia, coming on down to Lumberton. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that was forced and it would have followed the I-95 corridor, which would give us
Right.
an opportunity to grow our community. But we fought that.
Absolutely.
So, so
So
we don't have those things. T. If
we're
we don't have
screwed.
those things, it gonna be hard. Though we are tier one community. In closing, we need to get all the investment that
That
we
we
can get, but
possibly
you got to
can.
have a strong representative who are willing to fight for you.
Absolutely. Ted, closing thoughts?
We'll see you next week. We should have a better update on how many favorable candidates are there, and just hydrate, stay cool, and just be safe.
Absolutely. Mr. Floyd, closing thoughts?
So much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us, but who none of us to talk about the rest of us. Just
Absolutely.
information.
Absolutely. And my closing thought is you better know who or what you serve and whether or not it will serve you in the end because the end is coming. Have a fantastic day. This is the Up Zone, and we look forward to seeing you next week. Like, subscribe, share, follow, do all the things. All right.